Today's video is going to be a little different as it's less scientifically based and a little bit biased on my end. I'd be lying if I said I didn't have a vendetta against materialism, but it's still a point I want to make. Additionally, I'll be reading off a script for the first time, so enjoy. Materialism is a mindset that plagues America. We often find ourselves working every day to obtain things, whether that be a new car, new shoes, clothes, whatever you want. It doesn't stop at the physical level either, as we work to obtain social capital like prestige, notoriety, and followers. Aiming for these targets makes sense to us, and it seems that a lot of us believe that when we obtain these things, then we'll be happy, then we'll be satisfied, then our life will be better. But that's not the case. And it's actually common knowledge that people tend to feel empty or a fleeting sense of happiness after completing their long-awaited goals. But why are we unsatisfied? Why doesn't completing our goals appease us? Well, to me, it all comes down to evolution. Imagine you're a tiger. Now, imagine you just scored a big hunt, a fat giant water buffalo or something. After you eat your meal, you're going to be full and happy. But imagine if that meal satisfied you forever. Imagine if you were never hungry again. What would happen? Well, you would die, of course, because appeasing hunger isn't necessary to survival, but having energy is. Hunger is simply a mechanism to get you to eat and replenish yourself with that energy you need to survive. In a similar fashion, we most likely evolved in a way that keeps us from being satisfied with the position we're in. Think about it. From a survival standpoint, what do you have to lose from wanting more? Remember, evolution generally selects for things that help survival, not things that feel good. In this way, wanting more things is like hunger. It acts as a signal that compels you to do something that's going to increase your survival chances. Unlike food, though, wanting more things is something that has no bounds or cap. There's no set amount of accomplishments you can get before you feel happy. And we don't run out of these accomplishments like we run out of energy. Instead, your brain works in a way that gets you used to what you have and makes you still want more despite retaining the old things in the past. And this point becomes obvious when we look at human history. Think about what the living conditions were 200 years ago. A quick Google search will let you know they had way less in the 1800s than we do now. The American life expectancy was only 30 years old, and they were still preserving foods with methods like drying, smoking, and salting. Not to mention the high rates of infant mortality, disease, and lack of labor laws. I bet if you told people then what the average American has today, they would think, what more could a person want? But everybody still wants more to this day. Even the people at the top. In fact, it almost seems like the people who have the most want the most. But wanting more isn't necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it's wanting more that's allowed America to develop so much in these 200 years. If we were just satisfied then, we would still have these horrible living conditions. So we can see the function of wanting more and how it is helpful for survival. But on a personal level, it makes us feel empty and can bring a sense of depression to us. But how do we feel satisfied? How are we supposed to feel happy if we've literally been evolved to never be satisfied? Well, as cliche as it sounds, to me, the answer lies in love. Let me explain. In biparental bird species, it's been shown that the testosterone levels of male birds rise during mating season, which is most certainly not by coincidence. In fact, it's been posited by some researchers that this high level of testosterone is actually what controls the singing behaviors seen in male birds. For example, one study exemplified this by showing birds with supplemented testosterone sing more often when confronted by a female than birds who are given, a fake supplement. The thing is about these birds, though, is once one successfully mates, they then go into a parenting mode. And following, their testosterone levels go down. But why do they go down? Well, what's the point of having them anymore? They already completed their goal of having a kid. Now it's time to parent. So they'll get a different profile of hormones. In other words, they had a goal, they completed it, and then their body moved on without compelling them to seek the goal they already accomplished again. But how is that relevant to us, and what does this have to do with human satisfaction? Well, the thing is, this high level of testosterone while mate seeking followed by a dip when parenting is pretty common for all socially monogamous species, including humans. One study in particular used a longitudinal method to test testosterone levels of single men versus that of fathers that were married. In concordance to what we had been talking about, the single men had higher levels of testosterone during the first testing. 4 years later, when they were assessed again, it was showed that this held true. In fact, the study showed that if people from the single group went and got a partner or got a partner and had kids, they then would also have lower testosterone than the men who remained single, showing that it's not necessarily about being a father that lowers your testosterone. It's also just being in love with somebody. This was also supported when they tested fathers who don't parent versus fathers who do parent. They found that fathers who don't parent have testosterone levels similar to that of single fathers, whereas fathers who do parent have low levels of testosterone. So what's the point I'm making here? Well, first, I'm not saying that low testosterone just equals happiness, or I'm not saying that at all, actually.
I mean, if this were the case, then women would just all be extremely happy all the time. But obviously, it varies.
All I'm saying is that the timeline testosterone follows reflects that of a completed goal, and it seems that that goal is finding love, whether that be in a partner or actually raising a child. When you take this into account and add the anecdotal evidence of many parents and people in love about, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me, this is the best thing that ever happened to me, it seems to bolster their claims as evidence that this is actually the way to be happy. Looking at this leads me to believe that this could act as a biological blueprint as to why finding love is so important to people. It's our goal, and we never plan on really finding love after we find love. It's our one thing that we're going to do that's going to make us happy and satisfied for life. Looking at how love ideation occurs in anybody, including people who've never had relationships or people who aren't really mature enough to procreate, it seems like this might also just be ingrained in us, although social factors probably lead us to having ideation about love, like Disney movies and stuff like that. It's still worth noting. But maybe it's not just movies and society that push us towards seeking partnership with people. Maybe part of us knows it's the answer, and therefore we seek it out. Now that I've made my position, it's important to point out valid criticisms. For example, are humans even monogamous? And if it was so satisfying, then why do people cheat? Even if they don't want to cheat, why do happily married couples still want more kids after having a kid in the past? I mean, doesn't that go against the whole idea of a completed goal that you don't want to do again? Well, these are all valid criticisms, and maybe in another video, if you want, I'll tackle all of them and address all of them. I don't think you can tackle them in a sense of I'm right, you're wrong. I think they're all valid, but like I said at the beginning, I don't really think this is a super scientifically valid argument, and it is something that I just have personal feelings about. I do, however, think it would be interesting to go down that line of really testing it and seeing if it holds up. The last thing I want to say, though, is even if love is our answer, it definitely isn't the answer for all beings. Humans are uniquely sociable. In fact, we're the most cooperative species in the whole world. Given this, it makes sense that love would be such a positive thing for us as it promotes high quality and frequent relationships with others. For solitary animals, happiness could look a lot different, and since happiness isn't an evolutionary need, there's no guarantee that any other animal has it at all.
Following this line of thinking, it's also interesting to consider, what if we actually don't have something that could ever satisfy us? I mean, there's no evolutionary reason for there to be something to satisfy us. Maybe we actually are doomed to never be happy. Given evolution's randomness, we're lucky to even experience happiness. Though I'm sure that if it hadn't evolved, we wouldn't really miss it. Just like how we're blissfully happy missing out on other pleasures that evolution could have offered. It's an interesting thing to think about, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Goodbye.